Finally, it looks like we have adults in the room. Finally, guys. But before we get into today's video, welcome to Citizen Concerned, where we remind you to beware of the comrades. I'm Katlego and would appreciate it if you subscribed to our YouTube channel, liked the video, and shared it with other citizens. When we as citizens complain about the failures of the ANC, this is exactly what we are talking about. The things they do and the things that they fail to do which affect us the most. I think if the ANC was only corrupt, we could have said it's not too bad. But the problem is, in addition to being corrupt, they also do things that simply fail to make any sense. Corruption is found everywhere across the globe. But with the ANC, we find a scenario where the corruption is topped up with incompetence. With the ANC, we find that laziness of the highest order seems to dominate everything they have their hand in. South Africa actually has a laziness problem. Many South Africans require close supervision in order for them to do their work well. Many adults lack the drive and honesty to do their work well without threat or supervision. This is unfortunately a problem we need to address as South Africans. I mean, if we put those three in the same room, corruption, incompetence, and laziness together, you can easily collapse a country. How many years was this guy in charge of the correctional services in South Africa? His name is Ronald Lamola, and he was the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services from 2019 until the year 2024. Do you remember him? No? If you remember him at all, you'll remember him for some of the dumbest things that do not make sense. You'll remember him for being the Minister of Correctional Services during a time when stupid things were happening under his watch. Jacob Zuma was released from prison. Thabo Bester used to leave prison and go to stay in hotels along with Nandipha Makutumana. Thabo Bester was running fake businesses right from prison. Those scams resulted in people being victimized by the company that he was running. All this happened in prison while Ronald Lamola was in charge of correctional services. As if that's not enough, the body of a young man was smuggled into a prison. A dead body managed to enter a prison during Lamola's term. It was during his term that matches were used to burn that smuggled body, allowing Thabo Bester to escape and live outside prison. All of this happened during Ronald Lamola's term as a Minister of Justice and Correctional Services. And now, look at this. What has been found in prison? Cell phones have been found. Drugs have been found. People were continuing with their drug dealing while in prison under this Minister Lamola guy. Laptops have been found. A PlayStation and its controllers have been found in prison.
Now listen to this. Data, SIM cards, Wi-Fi routers, PlayStations, and in some instances, plasma TV screens were among the items that were seized.
Instead of feeling bad for their crimes, people have cell phones to create TikTok videos. They have calls and Zoom meetings. People are possibly organizing crimes in the outside world right from prison. They're possibly threatening victims and witnesses right from inside prison. People are running businesses and getting high whenever they want, right inside prison. What did this Minister Ronald Lamola achieve during his term as a Minister of Justice and Correctional Services? He went to lay charges against Israel. What significance does that pose for us as South Africans? Crime rates have been at their highest in South Africa. South Africans have been feeling unsafe in their own country. The prisons in South Africa have been failing to bring about much needed reform in the prisoners. Instead of dealing with these and other problems faced by South Africans that you are in power to serve, Ronald Lamola and the ANC chose to rather use our taxes to please a small group of people that supports Palestine. Imagine flying overseas to fix a Middle East conflict, all while their own borders are wide open. Spending money on an international problem while failing to make South African victims and witnesses feel safe enough to open cases and testify in those cases. Thabo Bester was going as he pleases, but hey, Israel versus Palestine was the main issue that kept the ANC awake at night. They fought hard to release Zuma from jail. After Zuma was jailed for his crime of being in contempt of court, he was supposed to serve his term. But guess what? Under this Ronald Lamola, Jacob Zuma was released from prison within 2 months on medical parole. After Zuma was ordered back to prison, Lamola worked with his president to release Zuma within less than a day of being ordered back to prison. But if you ask Ronald Lamola about his achievements in his 5-year term, he definitely has good things to share. He even came out to claim glory over self-sufficiency within the prisons. Listen to this.
We also took over a Department of Correctional Services that was in bad reputation in the country, particularly after the Busasa issues. And by the time we have left Vuyo, the Department of Correctional Services inmates are now working, producing their own food in agriculture. Also, we have revived and also built a number of bakeries across the country where they also produce their own bread. While there is still outsourcing, but there is also a significant amount of food that inmates are doing on their own. So there is a program of self-sufficiency that we have revived in terms of the Correctional Services Act.
So this was Ronald Lamola acting like he did something and put measures in place for self-sufficiency between 2019 and 2024. But if we have a look at this video taken 7 years ago at a prison called Brandvlei, Ronald Lamola was not a minister of correctional services at that time. This occurred years before his term, and clearly this was news that had to be celebrated because it was unusual for a prison facility to even be doing this at the time. Take a look at So that was 7 years ago. How about here, where we find Ronald Lamola stuffing his mouth with bread he found the inmates making? That was 5 years ago.
The Brandvlei Correctional Centre in the Western Cape wants to become completely self-sufficient.
And it's well on its way. ENC's Leanne Jensen takes a look at the various projects on the prison's grounds.
Land as far as the eye can see. Brandvlei Correctional Facility is sitting on an agricultural gold mine, and it's lapping it all up. For starters, the facility produces its own milk and butter at an on-site dairy, which also acts as a skills hub to inmates.
This dairy milk about 1,300 to 1,400 liters of milk per day. We milk 44 cows, around 44. The total animals at the dairy is about 134. The milk gets distributed to the other smaller places around us in the region as well, like Breda River and Dwars River. We produce enough milk for Brandvlei in whole and about 60 to 75% of the need of the other small places around us.
Just a short distance away, prisoners are tilling the soil for new crops. They produce enough to service the facility, while any surplus goes to neighboring areas. The bakery even got a visit from new Correctional Services Minister Ronald Lamola.
I'm surprised that the inmates can make such a nice bread. And it's clear, the facility is self-sufficient.
Plans are now afoot to acquire an abattoir so that the prison can produce its own beef.
So this is news from 7 and 5 years ago that Ronald Lamola is trying to claim now. I think instead of Ronald Lamola, this man, Duncan Jackson, who was the agriculture manager, could have been made the Minister of Correctional Services. Based on their achievements in the prisons, these are the people who should have become leaders in these ministries. Ronald Lamola achieved nothing. Nothing.
And we also took over a department where the NPA was struggling financially with no enough adequate budget, including the filling of vacant positions, which we have since sorted, although there's still a bit of challenges with the budget, but the situation is far better than when we came in. During this MTSF period, we have significantly improved that situation, and the NPA has also reduced the number of vacancy positions that they had.
He claims to have sorted the problems in the NPA, yet the NPA still struggles with shortage of skills to this very day. This is a useless man who is in charge of another ministry where he will most likely do nothing as well. Look at the mess he was in charge of. Now he wants to claim that he was the one who re-established the SIU. This guy's claims stink.
Including the re-establishment of the Special Investigating Unit that now has a number of cases that are in our courts. Hopefully, with time, those matters will be finalized and South Africans will be able to discuss and determine on the outcomes of those matters.
He found the SIU in place when he came into this ministerial position. He seems to love to claim ownership of ideas that he found in existence already. He claims to launch them and then does not implement a single thing. These are the real deeds that Ronald Lamola has achieved in his term as a Minister of Justice and Correctional Services from 2019 until 2024. Thabo Bester ran a fraudulent business from prison. He was smuggled out of prisons to hotels before he was smuggled finally to escape and live as a free man. Zuma was allowed to not serve his sentence, thus showing preferential treatment for Zuma twice. A dead body got smuggled into prison. Matches were smuggled into prison, and the dead body burned. Camera footage was erased. Laptops, cell phones, and PlayStations were smuggled into prison. Drugs were smuggled into prison. More than 600 million in tenders awarded by the Department of Justice and Correctional Services were said to be unlawful. All under the leadership of ANC's Minister Ronald Lamola. Ronald Lamola has nothing significant to show for his term as Minister of Justice and Correctional Services. Instead, it's the usual stuff. Corruption, incompetence, and laziness are what ruled his department. Meanwhile, he has been given another ministerial role. The guy is now Minister of International Relations and Cooperation. What on earth do you expect this kind of man to achieve in the name of South Africa? The ANC is investing time and resources into things that do not positively change the lives of South Africans at all. If anything, this minister's lack of action where it matters has possibly led to the hiding of or moving of evidence when prisoners are still under investigation. It has probably resulted in murders or intimidation of witnesses. We know for a fact that Thabo Bester managed to scam people with his fraudulent business. People's reputations were put on the line. Ronald Lamola should not even be the Minister of Toilets or the dumping sites after such a record. He's a minister that should have been fired or resigned. But we know that Cyril Ramaphosa is the leader of a rotten party that does not hold people to account. In America, Donald Trump nearly got assassinated. The director of the Secret Services, that is the department responsible for the protection of the presidents, has been forced to resign. And she had to resign. It made sense. I mean, what did she value? Instead of valuing the protection of presidents effectively and efficiently, she chose to focus on women representation in the hiring of their agents. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is what she cared about. She had a job to do and failed to do it, and for that reason, she had to resign. Can we see the same in South Africa, please? People resigning or being fired for failing at their jobs instead of being given another ministry to fail at. What makes President Cyril Ramaphosa think Ronald Lamola deserves any ministry after this kind of performance? Well, he is ANC. That is the qualifying criteria, right? Lamola should have resigned when Thabo Bester was found to have been living in hotels while expected to be serving a sentence in prison. He should have been fired when Thabo Bester and his helpers smuggled a dead body into prison, when Thabo escaped. Another opportunity was when the CCTV footage was found to be erased. Ronald Lamola should have resigned along with the warden and commissioner responsible for that specific prison. Now we seem to have a person who is effecting real change in the correctional services. Finally, less than a month on the job, the guy tells us that prisoners should be building things, growing things, and as soon as he gets on the job, we start seeing some results. Please keep pushing. Expose the ANC people for the corrupt, incompetent, and lazy people they are, all while fixing our beautiful South Africa. Guys, to be honest, most of these ministerial jobs are simply common sense positions. The fact that they failed so dismally at them proves that the ANC clearly does not know what common sense is. Someone may try to say, well, prisons have been raided before, contraband has been found before. Personally, I don't remember TVs, PlayStations, Wi-Fi routers, and laptops being found in prison cells. This is clearly a sign of the rot in the correctional services. Ronald Lamola was the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services for 5 years, and yet we still have shortages of judges. We are in a serious shortage of judges, but when it comes to Palestine, he acts very fast. When it comes to releasing Zuma, he acts fast, which is just disgusting. Shame on him and shame on the ANC.
Thobagale was left speechless and in shock at some of the items that were discovered during the search.
We found there are offenders that have got television sets, but they could not produce permits for them to have those television sets.
What permit does a prisoner need to own a TV in his jail cell? Don't tell us about producing permits for a TV that is mounted against the wall. What makes that prisoner so special? Prisoners cannot swallow TVs and laptops, so that excuse doesn't work here. Clearly, this is all the work of the officials working with or for the criminals in jail. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, like this video, and share it. I'm Katlego. This is Citizen Concerned. And until next time, beware of the comrades.